video is going to be a fun ranking where I'm going to be ranking all of my Odens Eye palettes for you guys. Now, I realize that I haven't really done this with any other brand because the brand that I usually purchase from the most with their eyeshadow palettes is Colourpop, and I realized that I have accumulated quite a few Odens Eye palettes over the past couple of years, and I actually have 8 palettes to rank for you guys. So now I own 8 palettes from Odens Eye, and I didn't realize that I had this many until the past couple of launches that they've had with the Christmas palettes and the new I think it's called Perfect World collection. Yeah. So I actually picked up 2 palettes from that collection, and then I also picked up one of the Merry Christmas palettes. I picked up the Merry Christmas palette when those launched. So I used to have 5, and now I have 8. So now I feel like that is a good number to rank for you guys. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I am actually wearing a combo of 2 of the newest palettes today from the Perfect World collection. But we are going to start out with number 8. And honestly, it's a bit surprising to me that this palette is actually ranking so low, because this was actually the only palette that I was going to pick up from the Perfect World collection, and it ended up being my least favorite. And it has nothing to do with the color story. It is mainly quality. And that is number 8, which is the Odens Eye and Makeup Just for Fun Flora Story palette. Now, with this palette, I really do love the shimmers in this palette. I do think that they're stunning. I really do love the color story. But for me, it's just simply the matte quality in this palette is truly really not that good. And it's upsetting because I just want to grab a tissue. I really thought I was going to love this palette. Like I said, absolutely no issues with Odens Eye shimmers. Their shimmers are always stunning. They're some of my favorite shimmers that I own. But for some reason, the mattes in this palette are super, super powdery, so much kick up. They get everywhere. I'm not talking about just kick up in the pan. It gets all over the palette, all over my desk, all over my other products when I'm putting the brushes back. My Colourpop Pretty Fresh Compact has been stained from the pigments in this palette, of the mattes. Because even when I'm blending the eyeshadows, they are so powdery. I see the powder fly up when I'm blending it out. And honestly, the greens aren't that hard to work with, but there's so much powder kick up that if you just saw that I blew off from this shade, and there are specks of the powder all outside of the palette, and it gets all over this palette. At this point, it's literally there's particles all over it. I have tried every single shade in this palette though. I actually just finished testing out this palette a couple of days ago, and honestly, I really look forward to using the shimmers in here. They are gorgeous, but the mattes are hard to work with. Now, I am wearing some of the mattes from this palette today, but honestly, they're not really blended that great. They're just okay. They're not the matte quality that I am used to from Odens Eye, which are usually super saturated, very easy to work with, and very pigmented. So honestly, when I got this palette, it was a bit of a shock to me that these really don't work that great, because I'm not used to that with Odens Eye. I guess there was just a quality issue with this palette. I mean, out of everybody I've really watched, the only person that actually had an issue with this palette was Karen Harris. She said that the shade Orchid was just not blending out on her outer corners, and you could see it in her video that the shade was very patchy on the outside of her outer corners. She could not get it to blend. So it's not just me that's having an issue. Maybe I got a dud palette. I'm not sure, because most of the reviews with this palette have been mostly positive. And I love Makeup Just for Fun. She's one of my favorite smaller YouTubers, and I'm just so happy that she got this opportunity. She's amazing, and I really could not see anybody else collaborating with Odens Eye than the past collaborators that they have worked with, and the current collab collection that they have with Batty Bean, Makeup Just for Fun, and Lauren May Beauty. But just again, it is a quality issue for me. I had such trouble blending out these purple shades when I did my first impressions video. You guys can check that out and see what I mean. The greens were way easier to work with, but again, they have a ridiculous amount of powder kick-up. I would say the only one that doesn't really have the only two that don't have too much powder kick-up are the two pastel kind of matte shades, but this shade Shroom and especially the two darker mattes kick up city. Like literally, really kick up is not too much of an issue for me, but usually people say if like a pan has too much kick up, it's gonna like be powdery and have fallout. I get fallout from these two when I'm applying them, especially the outer corner shades like these two shades. I had fallout all under here before I filmed this video, but that's why I do my eyes first, so then I can just wipe the fallout away. So that doesn't really bother me as much as the powder literally getting everywhere. Like it gets all over my keyboard, all over my desk, all over my brushes. When I tap off the brush, like the powder goes everywhere. So I really, really wanted to love this palette. The only reason why I like it is because of the shimmers. Their shimmers are still top-notch quality for me. They are beautiful. I just can't get down with the mattes in this palette. So it's hard for me to pick a favorite shimmer in this palette because I do want to swatch all of my favorite shades from each palette. I want to swatch one from each palette that's my favorite. I think I'd have to say the lavender purple shade. This one is so pretty. I love the multi-chrome, but this one is so stunning. And it's such a beautiful, like, super sparkly lavender purple. It's so freaking pretty. Again, I love the shimmers in this palette. If it wasn't for the shimmers in this palette, I probably would give up. But the shimmers do pretty much save the looks that I do with this palette. I just shouldn't have to, like I've said, I've grown to appreciate better mattes as I've gotten more into makeup, and the fact that I've tried probably 100+ palettes in my life at this point, probably more. And obviously I've decluttered ones that I haven't wanted to keep anymore. I don't think are that good, but I've learned to appreciate a good matte formula, because if your mattes aren't good, it's not gonna like be like up to the par that I would like to have my eye makeup look good. And y'all know I love my shimmers. I also love this Dawn shade. It is so stunning. It's so hard for me to pick one shade. I have to swatch this one. It's so beautiful. Their multi-chromes are my favorite shimmers from Odens Eye. They're so smooth and so beautiful. This one reflects like green and pink. But yeah, I really just had an issue with this palette. So let's not dwell on it anymore, but unfortunately it ended up being at the bottom because of that. And it's just so weird because I really thought that this was going to be my favorite one, but I ended up loving the other one a little bit more that I picked up over this one. But yeah, a good matte formula I really do appreciate now. I mean, I used to think mattes were boring, and now it's like I really do love a good matte formula to work with, because then it makes the shimmer look even better, and it just makes the, you know, experience of doing your makeup way better instead of making it like a hassle. And I feel like those mattes are kind of a pain to work with. So, all right, number 7 is actually my oldest Odens Eye palette, and that is the Freesia Diva palette. This palette, I think it's good. I really do like this palette. This was the first palette that I got from Odens Eye, and it made me fall in love with the brand. I think that their quality in this is still as good as their matte quality in the newer palettes that I own, because all the other palettes I'm going to talk about are all newer palettes to me. The reason why I'm ranking this one lower is just because it doesn't go deep and dark enough for me. These mattes are pretty, but honestly, I kind of wish that there was one more like deepening brown in this palette, or like a deep, dark, reddish burgundy. And I feel like it would have been perfect for me. And I actually, again, love the shimmers in this palette. And the mattes in here are really beautiful and punchy, especially this orange and this red. I also kind of hate the font of the shades in this palette. They're actually bigger typed on the back than they are underneath the pan. I can barely read the names of these. Like, I have to be like, what? Like, they're really small. Especially this one. This is so freaking tiny. I can barely read it. I don't know if anybody else has had that issue, but it's just like so annoying that I can't really read the shade names when I'm using this palette, but I don't really use it too often anymore, really at all. I was thinking about selling this palette, but I think I'm going to keep it kicking around because it is a beautiful palette. And my favorite shade, the shimmers in here are so beautiful. Again, just stunning Odens Eye shimmers, and the mattes in here work way better and are easier to work with than the ones in the Flora palette. Flora palette, not pally. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this palette because again, I haven't really used it in a while, but I think my favorite shade is this peachy shimmer up here. What is it even called? Gladsium? They are all like Swedish names, so forgive me if I'm butchering them. But they are really pretty, very smooth shimmers that I'm used to with Odens Eye. They are a different kind of formula than the newer shimmers. They're not as super sparkly, which I kind of wish they would put like some of these shades in their newer palettes because I do really love this shimmer formula. And then the other one that I really love is this one down here. It's kind of like a two-toned brownish, sparkly, silvery, bluish shimmer. It's so gorgeous. This one is, oh, it's so pretty. I love shades like this. And that one is called Rune, I believe. Yeah, that one is called Rune. So honestly, have absolutely no issues with the quality with this palette. It's beautiful. I would just prefer the mattes to go a bit deeper, but other than that, these mattes are so gorgeous, very punchy and beautiful. The matte quality that I'm used to with Odens Eye. And I really enjoy using these three shades with one of the shimmers on the lid. It's just so pretty, and these shimmers are so sparkly and beautiful, and they really look, you really just have to put them on your lid and they look amazing. They, like, the swatches don't really look as amazing as they do on your lid. They're so sparkly. I could not stop staring at my eyeshadow the first time I used this palette, and it's beautiful. I really like this palette a lot. So yeah, that one is number 7. Okay, so now let's move on to number 6. And again, this is one of the most recent. This is the newest palette that I've gotten from Odens Eye, besides the Flora palette, and I enjoy this palette way more than that one, and that is the Batty Bean Planet Spirit palette. And the reason why I like this palette more is because these mattes work beautifully. They're super pigmented, super punchy. Takes me like 10 minutes to do my eyeshadow with this, because I literally just use like 2 mattes from here. Because I feel like the point of this palette and the Flora palette is that you don't really need to use that many mattes, because usually I use like 3 mattes in a look. And I need to tell you guys what I'm wearing. Let me grab the other palette really quick. But like, I feel like the point with these palettes is that you only have to use like 2 mattes and then pop a shimmer on the lid and you're good to go. I actually tried to deepen up this palette with another shade from like another Odens Eye palette that was like a deeper brown shade, and honestly it didn't even need it because these mattes are so punchy and so beautiful that honestly I just wanted them to shine on their own. And I feel like that's kind of the point of these palettes, is that you don't really have to think about doing like very intricate looks. I feel like they've kind of made it a bit easier and like user friendly, because sometimes people don't know what colors to use when they get a palette, and they don't know what colors go together. And I feel like this makes it so much easier. But these mattes are so good and so beautiful. I really do enjoy these mattes. This orange and this green are so good. And these pink shades, when I did the pink look with this palette, I think I did include that in my first impressions video. That look lasted all day. The mattes did not fade at all. I find with the Flora Story palette, the mattes are like really not long lasting. This palette definitely is way more long lasting, and the shimmers in here are beautiful. I think my favorite shade is the greenish teal shade, which is called Familiar. So freaking gorgeous. It's this stunning like tealy green with so many shimmers in it. Oh my god, it's so freaking beautiful. It has like blue and green and silver sparkles in it. It's so pretty, and that's why I love Odens Eye shimmers over most other shimmers, because there's so many different multi glitters, and like honestly I feel like there's so many different ways to look at an Odens Eye shadow that it never looks the same every time you swatch it. And like when you do swatch it, you see like all the different multi glitters in it. It's so gorgeous, and it kind of reflects like goldish. It's so fucking pretty. And then my other favorite shade, I really love this Animalia shade. This shade is gorgeous. It's like this reddish orange. It's so pretty. I also love the mattes in here too. It's really hard for me to not swatch like a gajillion Odens Eye eyeshadows, because I really do love their shadows. I mean, that's why I have 8 palettes from them, but that one is Animalia. This one is such a pretty, like, it's a little softer, not as metallic as the green, but it has like this beautiful gold and silver and reddish sparkles in it. It's so gorgeous. That was the first shade that I tried from the palette, and it was beautiful. And I just have to swatch one of the mattes for you guys, because they're so vibrant and so beautiful. And I really don't have any issues with these. And there's really not that kick up issue with these whatsoever. They blend so well, and they're so easy to work with. And they're like the Odens Eye formula I'm used to. So I don't really understand what happened with the Flora Story palette. So I just wanted to tell you guys what I'm wearing today. So for my crease, I used all matte shades from this palette, and then I just popped one of the shimmers from the Batty Bean palette on my lid. So I used the shade Shroom in my crease, and I darkened up the crease more with Clover. And then I used Sage on the outer corners. And then for my lid shade, I used the shade Majestic, which is that really beautiful gold shade. And that's actually the last shade I needed to use in this palette. So now I have tested out all the shades in both palettes. So that's why I thought it was a good time to do my ranking. And then I just popped Best Buds from the Flora Story palette on my inner corners. And I actually really love how the look turned out. I love green and gold together. But it was not easy working with the mattes. I mean, it was definitely easier than the purples. But yeah, this palette is gorgeous. I really love it. I initially was not going to pick up this one, but then I'm so glad that I did, because this ended up being my favorite of the two. It really is a gorgeous spring summer palette. I feel like I'm going to reach for this quite a bit in the summertime, because I feel like it's such a punchy and easy eyeshadow palette to work with, because again, I usually use like a crease shade, a defining shade, and an outer corner shade, but with this palette I feel like I just need a crease shade, and then I'll take any of the deeper mattes and put it in my crease area, like the defining area and the outer corners, because like when you put the same shade in the outer corners, it deepens it up a little bit more. And I love my looks every time I use this palette. It's so pretty. So that one is number 6. Okay, number 5. Which again, I thought that this was going to be my favorite out of the Legendary Diversa series. But I like the other three a bit more than this one, and this was actually my first Legendary Diversa palette and only my second palette from Odens Eye, and that is the Hummingbird palette by Odens Eye and the Fancy Face. You unfortunately cannot get these palettes anymore, but this was a huge successful launch for them. And I was so happy when Tina released her collab, because I really could not think of anybody else that was more perfect to collaborate with Odens Eye than Tina. She's been repping them and representing them for years, and she's talked about them for forever and how much she loves their formula. So I was beyond excited to pick up this palette, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. The only thing is that I wish that there was kind of a bit more range with the mattes in this palette, but I understand the reason why is because she did explain that this palette is supposed to be a companion palette, which was a little bit interesting to me because Tina is a matte girl. She loves her matte shades, but oh my god, these are some of the most stunning shimmers from Odens Eye that I own. They're so freaking gorgeous. But she's more of a matte girl, so I was actually surprised that she made this more of a companion palette, but they are beautiful. But of course, I wish there was maybe like one or two more matte shades, but at the same time, the shimmers are so different from each other in this palette that they're so gorgeous, and I honestly wouldn't replace any of them. And there's so many good shades. But I think my favorite shade is Swallowtail, and this one is such a stunning orangey shimmer. It's so beautiful, and it looks so pretty with the Batty Bean palette. I'm probably going to have to combine these two palettes together at some point. So that one is Swallowtail. It swatches a bit more piecey just because these shimmers are a bit more flaky in this palette, but they are stunning. So that one is Swallowtail, and it's like a gorgeous tangerine orangey shimmer, and it's so beautiful. And then my other favorite is the shade Feathers. It is such a stunning lime green. Look at that. Isn't that stunning? This one is so pretty. Look at how beautiful that is. Oh my god, it's so pretty. And I just want to say that I probably have worn these shimmers in here the least out of all the shimmers I'm going to be talking about, because I have worn some of these twice, but honestly, some of them I've only worn once, just because it's a little bit harder to create looks with this palette. But every time I do use this palette, I love the looks that come out of it. They're so beautiful. I could be swatching these for days, and the mattes in here work beautifully. I love this super vibrant hibiscus shade. Oh my god, it's so good. And then these blues are gorgeous. I love that she put the blue and the purple in here. I love their deep mattes. They are always some of my favorite mattes from Odens Eye. But yeah, this palette is gorgeous, and I love the multi-chrome in this palette. But these two are definitely my favorite. But the multi-chrome is so stunning. Should we just swatch it? Why not? It's really beautiful, you guys. Like, again, I have to swatch like a gajillion shades from them. I really did not swatch that great, but this one is a little different than Dawn and Fauna. It's more pink based than Dawn. Dawn has like a green base to it, and this one has like a pink base. You can't really see it too much on camera, but in person it like reflects like gold and green and orange. Really beautiful. So yeah, this palette is gorgeous, but unfortunately you can't get any of the palettes that I'm talking about anymore, but that's why I snatched these up. So this was the first one that I got from the Legendary Diversa series, and then I loved it so much that I ended up picking up the other two, and those will make an appearance, but not yet, so that is a hint. Okay, number 4. We're getting into the top 4, you guys. So number 4 is also part of the Legendary Diversa series, but this palette came out a bit after the original 3, and that is the Hella palette by Angelica Nyquist and Odens Eye. This palette is so beautiful, you guys, and I really do truly love this palette. I love the combination of the greens and the pinks in this palette. I love like how springy this palette is, because this came out a few months after the original series came out. It came out like March of 2021, I believe, and it was available for quite a while. Actually, maybe it was, no, I think it was March 2022, because the Legendary Diversa collection, I think, came out at the end of 2021. So this came out last spring, and this was available for a good like 8 months. So I'm sorry if you didn't get your hands on it, but it was available for a long time. It was actually available longer than all these other palettes that I'm going to talk about. There's so many beautiful shimmers in this palette, and I really love the mattes in here. I love the combination of the green and the pinks. They are my favorite combo of spring shades to wear. Honestly, when I think of the springtime and I think of spring makeup, all I think about is pink and green together. I don't know why. It's just my favorite combo to wear. So I really do love wearing this palette in the springtime. These hot pinks are so punchy and beautiful. These greens are really pretty. I love these green shimmers. Oh my god, they're so gorgeous. I love this green shade. That's my favorite shade in the palette. And then we have these deeper, dark, like grungy tones on the bottom, and they really work beautifully. This is such a cohesive palette. I've done so many beautiful looks with this palette, and every time I use it, I love my makeup, and I've used all of these shimmers twice. Thank God. The only thing that I would say is that I kind of wish there was like one more greenish matte in here, not like this super swampy green, but maybe like kind of a medium tone green shade, just to go a little bit better with the other greens. But honestly, these two shades together go perfectly with this color, that like it's not really that big of a deal to me because it's such a gorgeous palette. The mattes in here are so pigmented and so good, and I love this super deep dark brown. I'm so glad she put this in the palette because she loves her depth. So this brown and this green really add so much depth to any look that you do. The most recent look that I did with this palette was with the pinks, and I actually wore double-sided on my lid again finally, and it was such a beautiful look. But I used the pinks and then I used the green on the outer corners, and they worked so beautifully together. Like honestly, with Odens Eye, I don't have to worry about like layering the mattes because they won't get desaturated or like have trouble blending into one another because they always work so well together. Sometimes you can lose like the pigment if you do that with certain other brands and combining certain like matte shades together, like certain colors that don't really go together, but these all work seamlessly together. So I love this palette. It's so beautiful. So yeah, my favorite shade in the palette is the shade Venom because it's such a punchy, super gorgeous green shade. Oh my god. And it is different from, wow, my swatches are from Hunger today. I don't know what is going on. But it's such a beautiful, like, more kind of mintier green as compared to Tropics. Tropics is a lot more of like a swampy kind of shimmer. Like swampy kind of shimmery green. And this color, I did turn on my space heater because I'm actually staying home today because the weather outside is literally terrible. I was supposed to see my boyfriend today, but it's actually getting a lot worse throughout the day than it was before. It's actually pretty bad right now. So this one is the shade Venom, and it's such a beautiful, like, sparkly green. I love it so much. And there's so many beautiful, like, sparkles in here. There's, like, gold and blue and green sparkles in here. It's so pretty. And then my other favorite shade is this shade River. This one is such a unique color for Odens Eye. It's kind of like a duochrome shade, and it's a gorgeous, super sparkly, doubles, like almost duochrome kind of color, and it's super wet looking on the eyes, and I love doing like cool tone looks with this shimmer, and also this black, like, oh my god, this shade is beautiful. It's like a black-based silvery shimmer. It's so gorgeous. I love using both of these shades with like cooler tone looks in the palette, where I use this shade and this like deep, oh my god, this shade is so pretty too. This shade Decay is such a beautiful like deeper cool tone brown. and then I put soot on the outer corners, and then I use either one of these on the lid. Such a beautiful look. Oh my god. So yeah, I love the versatility of this one. It's so beautiful. So yeah, I love this palette. It's beautiful. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about it. So that one is number 4. I don't know why I keep on losing my voice. I'm still getting over my sickness, but I kind of like got over my cough today, so my voice is just a little bit raspy and I sound a little bit nasally still. All right, let's get into the top 3. I just want to wipe off some of these swatches because that River shade didn't really swatch the greatest, and I want to swatch all of these really well for you guys. So hold on one second. Okay, so let's get into the top 3 for you guys. So number 3, 2 in 1, you can't get anymore. They were very limited edition palettes, but they ended up being my favorites. When they say something's limited edition, I don't sleep on it. I snatch it up because I know that these palettes are going to sell out. And this, I think, was the like fastest selling out launch for Odens Eye like ever. So number 3 is the Merry Christmas palette. This palette is one of the best palettes that I tried last year. It ranked very high in my rankings for ranking all my eyeshadow palettes that I tried in 2022. I think I ranked it at like number 4. They truly captured Christmas with this palette, and I was debating on getting both of the palettes, but I was like, Caitlin, just get the one that you know you're gonna use more. And honestly, I'm so glad I just picked up the one. I mean, the Christmas Eve palette was so beautiful, but honestly, I didn't need it. I mean, I kept on like debating on whether or not I was going to get it, and I think by the time I was thinking about getting it, it had sold out. And I was like, you know what, it's fine because again, I really didn't need it. But this palette, these are my favorite shimmers that I've ever tried from Odens Eye. The shimmers in here are so freaking beautiful. They really killed it with the shimmers in this palette. The mattes are so freaking good too. Like the quality of this palette is so gorgeous, but the shimmers are just so multi-dimensional, and there's so many different sparkles and shifts to these shimmers. It's not just like a regular shimmer. Like basically all the shimmers in this palette have like a different shift to them. They are so beautiful, and the mattes work so nicely, and they're pigmented, and they work beautifully, and they blend beautifully. So yeah, I really love this palette. The only reason why this one's ranking a little bit lower is because y'all know I love my mattes, so sometimes I did have to pull in like 1 or 2 other mattes from like other Odens Eye palettes just to get like the look that I wanted to get with these. But usually I think I was only like 2 times that I did that. Usually like I would just work with the mattes in this palette and pop one of the beautiful shimmers on the lid, and honestly like the look was so stunning that it's like it didn't really need anything else. So yeah, I mean, I used the shit out of this palette during Christmas time because I knew that that was like really the time I was going to be able to use the palette the most. So I wanted to use it as much as possible. So like some of the embossments kind of wore off because they were like kind of like they were like snowflake embossments on the mattes, and I think these ones, like, I don't know if those ones had any. But if they did, they completely wore off. But it's such a gorgeous palette. I love that they put these greens in here. So they work beautifully with all these like greener kind of toned shimmers. So pretty. And then like these reddish tones with like some of these warmer toasty kind of vibes. It's just such a gorgeous palette. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. So yeah, I love this palette. So my favorite shade is the multi-chrome in here, which is called Elf Wish. This is like my favorite multi-chrome that I own from Odens Eye because it's so freaking stunning. It like shifts green and red and orange, and it's just so beautiful. Oh god, I love this palette. And I love this shimmer. I actually just recently used this shimmer in a palette bingo for Odens Eye. I ended up drawing this shimmer from this palette because I used all my Odens Eye palettes. I can't wait to post that video. And this was the shimmer that I got from this palette. And I was so happy because I was like, oh, my favorite shade. I'll just use this shade. And it's just, I forgot how gorgeous it was though, because again, I haven't used it since Christmas time. I could swatch every single shimmer in this palette because I literally love all of them so much. But my other favorite in here is the shade All Right, which is a stunning like tangerine orange. It's so pretty. Oh my god, I love that shade so much. I think I'm going to whip this palette out tomorrow and use it for work because I'm just dying to use it again. But this is such a beautiful like tangerine orange, excuse me, and I have to swatch at least one of the mattes from here because they are insanely pigmented. I barely touched the pan. I just went like this and it's already like super pigmented, and that's how it applies to your eyes. Like, you really don't need too much product. But these are the mattes that I'm used to from Odens Eye. They're amazing. So I really don't know what happened with that other palette. And I love this deeper burgundy red and this like deep dark, like, I would say this is a black. I know some people say it's like a blackened brown, but honestly, it looks like it's a black to me, especially when I use it. But I love that they included this because it deepens up any look. This palette's amazing. I love it. I just love it. These shimmers are absolutely stunning. I love this shade's little star. It's kind of like a pinkish reddish gold. And this shade Bless is like a gorgeous magenta pink. And then this shade Snowman is a stunning shimmer. And this shade Santa Star, oh my god, it's such a beautiful gold. And Jingle Bell is a stunning, like, kind of greenish antique gold. And this shade, New Year, is a stunning emerald gold. So I love this palette and these greens. It's just phenomenal. Phenomenal job. This was a lot of people's favorite palette of the year, like this one and the Christmas Eve palette. It topped Karen Harris's list. And it was really high in Morgan Turner's ranking as well as mine, and also Batty Bean's. So they killed it with this. It's amazing. Okay, so number 2 and number 1. Can you guys guess? They're part of the legendary Diversa collection, because I did say that earlier. So, and what's so funny is that I was not going to pick up either of these, and they ended up becoming my favorite Odens Eye palettes, because originally, I said to myself I was only going to get the Hummingbird palette, and then I kept on staring at these on the website that I'm like, I have to get the other two. And I was blown away by these two palettes. So number 2 is the Annette's Makeup Corner Giant Wolves palette. Oh my god, the looks I have done with this palette and how versatile this palette is with just 12 shades. She absolutely killed this color story. I love this palette so much. Every time I use this palette, I freaking am obsessed with the looks that I do with this palette. You can do blue looks, you can do green looks, you can do pinkish purple looks, you can do purple looks, you can do more mustardy greenish looks. Like, it's just so stunning, and the shimmers are so beautiful. But I love the matte selection in this palette. I don't feel like I have to bring in anything else when I use this palette. 7 mattes in here and 5 shimmers are like the perfect ratio for me. I love the greens together with this deepening black shade, and then I love the blues with the pinks, and I love the purples with the black. I love the greens with the purples. It's just such a beautifully curated palette, and they ended up becoming my favorite palettes from Odens Eye. So this palette is just so gorgeous, and I just love the looks every time I use this palette. And I think my favorite shade from this palette is the shade Flare, which is this stunning antique greenish gold kind of shade. But it's so gorgeously metallic and so stunning on the lid. It's so freaking good. It's just so beautiful. Like, I'm just speechless about this palette because I love it. And then the other shade that I love is the multi-chrome in this palette. This multi-chrome is so gorgeous. It's like a bluish, pinkish, purpley multi-chrome. It's so stunning. it's so pretty. And every time I put it on my lid, I'm like blown away on how gorgeous it is. But again, I could swatch these for forever. I also love the shade Astral. It's such a stunning, like, snow white kind of shimmer, and I use this so much for the inner corners because she said when she made this palette, she really wanted, like, she loves, like, super light shimmers, especially for the inner corners, and she wanted this to be the inner corner shade that you would use all the time, and it really is because it's so stunning. And then the mattes in here are so good, so punchy and beautiful. This blue shade, Azure, one of the best blues that I own. It is such a punchy, super vibrant, like poolside kind of shade, but it still works as such a gorgeous, like wintry vibes shade. Oh my god, it's so pretty. I love this palette. I could talk about it for forever, and this is one of my favorite winter palettes. I mean, how can you not get the winter vibes with this palette? It's so beautiful. I've used it so much, and I just love my looks, and I look forward to using this palette every time I'm able to use it. It's just stunning, and again, the mattes in here are phenomenal, and the shimmers are gorgeous. So yeah, she absolutely knocked it out of the park with this palette, and it's amazing. I love it so much. But I think y'all can guess which one is my absolute favorite palette from Odens Eye. Drum roll, please. Number 1 is the It's Judy Time Red Dragon palette. I mean, how can this not be my favorite palette, you guys? Y'all know I love my warm tones. So when this palette came out, and you know what's funny is that she's actually the creator I watched the least out of all of these creators that I've picked up and supported, like Angie, Batty Bean, Makeup Just for Fun, and Angelica Nyquist. I watched, and Annette's Makeup's Corner. Annette's Makeup's Corner. Oh my god, I can't speak. Annette's Makeup Corner. Did I say buy Annette's Makeup Corner for this palette? This is Annette's Makeup Corner's palette. I freaking love her. But yeah, I watch them all way more than I do watch Judy. But she made my favorite palette. Like, I didn't know Homegirl loved all the same shades that I freaking love to wear. Oh, this palette is so freaking gorgeous, you guys. Like, it might not look as interesting as you would think, but this has every shade that I need in this palette. Because of the matte selection in this palette, I mean, for me, I just wish there was one more shimmer in this palette. I probably would have swapped out this green shade for another shimmer. But when I use that color, I realize how much I really do love it in this palette. But the matte quality in this palette is phenomenally good. This Red Dragon shade, oh my god, it's so freaking pigmented. But every time I use this palette, it is so easy to use. Such a pleasure to work with. And these 4 shimmers, there's only 4 shimmers in here, are so freaking stunning on the lid. Oh my god, I love this palette so much. But I love the matte selection in here. I love that there's so many deepening options in here, like this deepening really like cool tone brown, and then there's this more warm tone, like really deep brown, and then there's this really deep burgundy red. Hello. And then we have these more warmer tone matte browns, and then we have this beautiful like warm tone peach shade. Y'all know how much I love those kind of colors as well. And then this green, I mean, and then this really beautiful warm tone brown, and then these shimmers are so freaking stunning. Oh my god. My favorite shade is the multi-chrome, the shade Luna. And you don't really know how beautiful this shade is until you put it on your lid. But this is my absolute favorite multi-chrome that they've ever done besides Elf Wish. It is like, you can't really see it when you swatch it. It's so freaking good though. It reflects like brown to like red to green. It is so beautiful, and there's like a bit of orange in there as well. Again, you can't really see it on camera, but in person, oh, I love it. I love it. It's so beautiful. And then my other favorite is Solar Flare. It's such a stunning, like this one's a little bit more flaky, but it's such a gorgeous, like super kind of silvery gold. It's a very unique color to me. Oh my god, it's so pretty. And it has like a bit of green to it as well. And oh my god, the mattes are so good. And I love the shade Amber and Overheat as well. Amber is such a beautiful bronzy shimmer, and this one is such a beautiful like peachy tone shimmer. But I have to swatch Dragon for you guys because that is my favorite matte in this palette because it's so stunning. It definitely applies better on the eyes than I am swatching it. These are a little bit more less saturated than the ones in the Christmas palette, but they are so pigmented when you put them on the eyes. They just don't swatch as pigmented, but they're so beautiful. So yeah, that is it, you guys. That is my number one palette, and I cannot believe I wasn't going to pick up this palette along with the Annette's Makeup Corner, and I'm so glad that I did because I really feel like I would have had FOMO if I didn't get this one or the other one, and then they ended up becoming my favorites. But honestly, again, how could this not be my favorite? Because you guys know I love warm tone eyeshadows, even though I'm wearing more of like a cooler tone look today, because I tend to gravitate more towards cool tones in the winter time. So yeah, let me stop rambling. I need to go eat lunch. I'm getting hungry. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819. And check out my Poshmark at the same handle. And let me know if you guys have tried any of these palettes from Odens Eye. Have you guys tried Odens Eye? Is it on your wish list? And which one is your favorite from Odens Eye? Please let me know. Okay, I love you guys. Bye.